All right. When we look at the genealogy in chapter 11, and we compare the years there to chapter 5, what do we observe? Double digits instead of triple digits. Yes, yes. It's interesting that in 5, they have their children when they're about 110. And here they have their children when they're 35, Arphaxad, and so forth. What's the point, do you think? Yes, yes. Personally, I would not want to live 900 years. And or have children, yes, at age 150. Yes, yes, that's a very, very likely possibility. Yes.
Bacteria, something that God caused it all to make the age, because the age had to come down. But I think something changed because right after the flood, age started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think so. I think mine did that before the flood.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. No, I think that is one of the suggestions that is made. Um, this gets more speculative, but remember there had been no rain before the flood. And the suggestion is that there had been just a cloud covering the earth, and that in fact it blocked some of the UV rays, and that when the flood came, that cloud collapsed, and we now have more exposure to ultraviolet rays than we did before. So they're interesting things to think about, but I think it's significant that in toto, the life that God built into Adam took a long time to really knock down. Ultimately, of course, it's going to be 120 and then ultimately 80. And so that means that I'm out of warranty.
Genesis 6, their lifespan's going to be 120 years. It couldn't have been an immediate, like, once you get to 120, as soon as he says that, you die.
Yeah.
Like it had to be a gradual lessening of the age.
Mm-hmm.
That would have wiped out a bunch of really old people. Fulfilling his promise, but doing it in a gradual way.
Yes, yes.
That how our lives be lived differently versus for yourself until you get close, and then you're like, okay, now.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll straighten up when I get close to the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. All right. Another thing to observe, we have 2 genealogies of Shem. In chapter 10, beginning at verse 21, we have one. And then we have another here at the end of chapter 11. What's the difference between the 2 of them? Yes. Yes. One is what can be called horizontal. Here is Shem, and here are his various children, and here are these various children. So that's a horizontal. These are all the descendants. Obviously not all, but they are a representative example of all those who descended. So what's the difference then with chapter 11? Exactly. It's a vertical, so that Shem gave birth to this person, who gave birth to this person, who gave birth to this person. What's the point of that in terms of where we're going in chapter 12? We're setting it up. We're setting it up for what is going to happen in the next chapter, in chapter 12. Now, my famous map making skills. The Euphrates, the Tigris, this is the area where the Sumerian city-states were located. It's also the area, especially down in the far south, ultimately known as Chaldea. This is a recent name when we speak of biblical time, so that its appearance here is a later updating. Just the same as if you would write Chaucer in modern English. You're saying they came from the deep, deep south, which we now call Chaldea. One of these famous cities was the city of Ur. So when the Bible says that Abram came, and Terah originally came from Ur of Chaldea, that suggests that they came from this ancient Sumerian city-state. There are, though, the city of Haran is located up here. And there are those who have discovered there is a city named Ur up here. And so there's some suggestion that, in fact, this is where Terah started from, not clear down here. Personally, I think it's down here. My reason for that is what I mentioned on the sheet for chapter 12. From 3200 to about 2200, the Sumerian culture was by far the most advanced in the world. They then ultimately spark the Egyptian culture, which starts about 3000 and then catches up pretty quickly. So you've got these two poles, the Sumerians and the Egyptians, and this is what is known as the early Bronze Age. These people, the Sumerians and the Egyptians, have the world by the tail. They have developed everything that's significant. And in that sense, it is shocking when it all begins to fall apart. During the latter part of this, from about 2500, you have more and more, the Sumerians are not Semitic. As I think I said last time, we don't know where they came from. Their language is a little bit like Finnish and not much like any other language in the world. what's going on. But beginning about 2500, you have more and more Semitic names showing up in the various writings. Most of the writings from this period are economic. Joe Blow sold six sheep to Jim Smith. That's mostly what they are. Thousands and thousands of economic tablets recovered from Sumer. A few that are more interesting to us, more literary, but in this collection of writing, you have more and more Semitic names showing up. And ultimately, in 2200, a city named Akkad grows up. This is where we get Akkadian from. The Semitic language that ultimately these people spoke and these people spoke are dialects of this. This city has never yet been rediscovered. It's waiting for some archaeologists. And in 2200, the Semites took over this whole area, and they claim to have built an empire that reached the upper sea. Whether this is true or whether it's just a spin is not clear, but at any rate, and my sheet is incorrect there. I said it lasted 2,000 years. No, it lasted 200 years. One too many zeros there. Only 200 years. And then it collapsed. And at this point, which is roughly 2000, you've got chaos. And it's really interesting to read the literature both in Egypt and in Sumer. They're just stunned. They cannot believe, how could the world fall apart like this? We had everything put together. We had figured out how life works. And now, what now? Oh my goodness. I have to believe this is exactly when God took his opportunity. It's exactly when life begins to fall apart that God is able to get his oar in. And so at this point, beginning in about 2000 until 1750, you have what's called the Middle Bronze Age, and that is a period of great upheavals. It's interesting that about 5 times in the course of history, there has been an influx out of the desert, not quite that far, Islam is part of that. It's the last one of those. So one of those happens during this time. People called the Amorites, the Westerners is what it means. They established a great city here on the Euphrates called Mari. And so you've just got upheaval going on with a lot of people movements. Terah set out from Ur of the Chaldees to go to Canaan. On the way, he stopped in Haran. Yes, yes. You can't go across the desert if you're going to go to Canaan. You can. There are a couple of oases on the way, and so once camels are popular, it's possible for the camels to travel from one oasis to the other. But before that, no. You had to go up the valley, across the desert to the great oasis of Palmyra, Tadmor, and then to Damascus, another oasis, and then down the coast. So if you're going to do this, that's the way you travel. So it's in that kind of a setting that all of this takes place. And it's interesting. We've again recovered a good-sized library at Mari. And one of the interesting things there that I mentioned on the sheet is immigrants are not permitted to live in one place more than 6 months at a time, and they are not permitted to buy property. Again, we'll talk about that with Abram and his life and what's taking place here. So that it's in that context that all of this takes place. Now, it's interesting. Some people want to suggest that, well, Terah was instructed by God to go to Canaan, and he stopped at Haran, and that was sinful. My problem with that is the Bible didn't say a word about that. It doesn't say that Terah was directed to go there. Abraham was directed to go somewhere, but Terah, exactly. So that I don't think there's any reason to think that there was something wrong in what Terah did. But he started out as part of these great people movements and ultimately stops up here at Haran. Okay, a lot of stuff there. Questions, comments? In Syria?
Syria.
Yeah, yeah. This is roughly, that's roughly Syria today. Iraq extending up that way, and then Turkey. Other questions, comments? Clear enough? Okay. Exactly. Education is worthless without testing. But I think it's very significant that, oftentimes people have said, oh, Abraham, he was a primitive. No. Two of the world's greatest civilizations of all time had risen and fallen before Abraham comes on the scene. And it's in that crisis. And to me, I think it's very significant that he started out in this great Sumerian city-state, which was struggling to sort of reassert itself during the Middle Bronze period. Hammurabi is from Babylon, and he was regularly fighting with the Amorites and the emerging Assyrians up here, and he ultimately put it together about 1700. Okay. We are now doing a tremendous shift. In chapters 1 through 11, and this is in many ways signaled by those two genealogies of Shem. In 1 to 11, we're talking about the general problem of the world. Now, in 12 through 50, we're going to talk about one family and 3 generations in that family. My goodness. How do we explain that? This terrific shift from the problem of the world and a single family. How do we explain that? God's solution, okay. But how do we explain the world and a single family? James?
guard, and then there was the image of God bearer, servant of God, within the larger guard.
Mm-hmm. Could be, could be.
World is made up.
The world is made up of families. Okay, let's push that. What did we say that the flood showed? It did not get rid of sin. Getting rid of all the bad actors didn't solve the problem. You're not going to solve the problem on some worldwide general approach. The problem is going to have to be solved in individual human hearts. This is just stunning. Stunning. One after another, God is solving the problem. He's not going to solve it with some mass movement, as significant as mass movements are. But unless the individuals in that mass movement are transformed, forget it. Forget it. So the structure of the book is profound. The problem is worldwide, but the solution is in individual people. And again, individuals in families. That's significant because you could say, well, let's just do this individual and that individual and the other individual. No, no. It's individuals in the context of family. And this is why the devil hates families. Hates them. Because it's in that context that our lives are changed. I'm in my devotions these days, I'm in 1st and 2nd Samuel. And that story just is heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. When you see David having done what he's done, and the next thing that happened, and it's so interesting, we're not told, but here is the crown prince, Amnon, conceiving this devilish lust for his half-sister, raping her, and then throwing her out. And I think we're invited to think of Amnon saying, well, look what the old man got away with. Now, this is so typical of the Bible. The Bible often invites us to think about possibilities here. It doesn't tell us what to think over and over again. But I think the fact that the Bathsheba incident is immediately followed by the Amnon and Tamar thing, I think we're invited to think of Amnon saying, well, hey, he could do it. Why can't I? And then you go through the rest of that tragic story. And again, it's very fascinating. This is all free, by the way. It's very fascinating that David, in warfare and in politics, is incredibly decisive. But with his family, he cannot. He didn't do anything about Amnon. He knew perfectly well what had happened. And the Bible says he was unhappy about it, but he didn't do anything. And so Yeah, over his family, yes, yes. And so Absalom does what he does, kills Amnon, who had raped Absalom's full sister. And then, oh my goodness. It's in the context of family that God redeems us. Okay. Yes.
Piggyback on that.
Sure.
Sin was a broken relationship between Adam and Eve and God.
Yeah.
And so it had to come through relationships. And that's something I've learned as a foster adoptive parent, is that the broken relationship for my sons with their bio family and all that went on there.
Yes.
The only way to heal that is through relationship.
Yes.
And
Yes.
unfortunately, it always, people always say it takes twice as long to heal the hurt that happened.
Oh,
with
yes.
kids.
Oh,
So
yes.
I'm counting down, don't worry, I keep track of that. But like, see that in this.
Oh, yes.
That there was a broken relationship
Yes.
between Adam and Eve and God.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
he's going to mend that relationship, but it has to come in a relationship.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's often pointed out humorously, there are no functional families in the Bible. Again, this is a mark in my mind of inspiration. We're not talking about some beautiful, lovely icing on the cake up here. No, it's God is working in the mess.
Relationships are messy.
Yes.
They're very
Oh,
messy.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's where the healing comes. is
Yep.
messy.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what did God ask Abram and Sarai to do? And how does that relate to how he operates? What did he ask them to do? Go someplace. Yes. In other words, first of all, he says, leave this. This is your support system. Much more in that day than our own day. I mean, who you were was entirely tied up in your clan, in your family, in your father's house. And God says, leave it and go somewhere. Now, it's interesting. Again, this whole question, well, if Terah was headed toward Canaan, then Abraham must have known he was headed toward Canaan. That's not what the text says. Just start out and go. Now, what is God doing? And how does this relate to how God operates? One day at a time. Yes. We're going to talk about this. Exactly. As long as you're holding on to your past, you can't reach forward. Remember what I've said in so many ways, that pagan religion is built on the idea of manipulation. I figure out how to manipulate the gods. I figure out what I need, first of all, and I figure out which god is most likely to be able to help me to get what I need. And then I figure out how to manipulate that god to get what I want. No. And he doesn't tell us in advance. He says, start walking, daring to believe that I am leading you. Oh my goodness. No, 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 no. No, no, no. You tell me where we're going and I'll decide whether I want to go there or not. No, no. It's not faith and it's not trust. No, I don't trust you to lead me someplace that I don't want to go. And there's the whole bottom line all the way through. And remember, this is where the problem started in the garden. You cannot trust God. He's not for you. He wants to deprive you of your likeness to him. Yes, someone over here. Yeah.
It takes a lot of time to pray until you know God's will and then do it. And if it's not his will, quit praying until you change his mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes, though, as here, he didn't know what God's will was. All he knew God's will was move. That much he knew. Jan. We don't know the answer to that question. The Lord said. Did he say through some prophet? Did he say through somebody else? We don't know. We don't know. But somehow, Abraham knew this was God. Well, there were magicians among them. They weren't all magicians. Don't know. Yeah, it's just one of those questions the Bible doesn't answer for us. Okay. All right. Now, what does God promise? Verse 2. Yeah, you're ahead of me. What's the first line? What does he promise? A great nation. Now, what do we know about Abram and Sarai? Yeah. God, have you seen Sarah recently? Now look down at verse 7. What's he going to do? One of the great issues in worldwide religion, but especially in ancient Near Eastern religion, is fertility. We have problems with overpopulation. Most babies died before they were 2. So that much of Near Eastern religion, that's why they worship the mother goddess. That's why you have these disgusting idols of a female figure with hips like this and huge pendulous breasts. Because she, baby, she can have kids like falling off a log. That's what we got to have here. How much had they prayed over the years? How much had they, and again, we don't know anything about Abram's religion before chapter 12. Most people today think that he was probably a polytheist. It at least implies that. Whether he knew anything about this God or not before these moments, and God simply says, I'm going to give this to you. Wow. No rituals, no sacrifices, no myths. This God says, I'm going to give this to you. Now, let me ask you one of the later questions. How is God identified in these 12 verses? No, what title? What do you think is the significance of that? Not once in these verses is he called God. What's the significance of that? No, no, no. It's the personal name. It's not Lord. Lord shows up 1,000 years later. Personal, covenantal. This is the God of the covenant. And again, we don't know the answer here. Exodus says, by my name Yahweh, I was not known. Well, if that's true, then Moses has put this in here to say, I know who it was that was talking to Abram. Now, we don't know. We don't know whether that statement means literally. Maybe they knew the title, maybe they knew the terminology, but they didn't know him personally. Maybe that's what's going on. We don't know. But anyway, there it is. And the presence of that name exclusively in this setting says it's this God. It's the covenant God. It's the God who wants to be known by his first name. That's the God who showed up and said, I'm just going to do this for you. I'm just going to do this for you. Now, let's pick up on Charlie here. He says, I'm going to give you children. Lots of them. And I'm going to give you land. Remember what I've said about this period in human history? You're an immigrant, Abram. You can't buy land. You can't own anything. But don't worry about it. I'm going to give it to you. And then I'm going to not bless you. I'm going to make you a blessing. That, of course, takes us right to the end of the Bible. What's this all about? Why did I choose you? Why did I invite you to go on this journey? Just so you can have a good time? No, 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 no. I don't merely want to bless you, Abram. I want to bless the world. And again, that tells us that chapters 12 to 50 are intimately connected to 1 to 11. Because where did the whole thing start? In chapter 1. He made them male and female and... Do you know your Bible? Bless them. The whole thing starts with God's intention to bless the world. And tragically, and God says, Abram, and again, I get goosebumps here. If you'll leave your support system, if you'll leave everything you know, everything that gives you identity, if you'll leave that for me, I will use you to reverse that. Now, I often wonder, how many people did God make this offer to before he got a taker? I wonder if maybe he'd lost his job the week before. Or maybe their house burned down. Something happened that when God said, if you'll leave everything that you know, everything that supports you, and walk with me, I'll use you to change the world. Abram looked at Sarah and said, what do you think? She said, why not? Load the donkey. Ooh. Will somebody dare to trust me?
As opposed to the guy later, we're gonna make a name for ourselves.
Exactly, exactly. Let me give you a name, not grab one for yourselves. Yes, yes. Now, look at these. How spiritual are those? Not at all. He doesn't promise him eternal life. He doesn't promise him forgiveness of sins. He doesn't promise him redemption. Because he's got to start way farther back than that. Absolutely, absolutely. These are things that people want. It's in your self-interest. But, The way I have liked to say it is, there's nothing spiritual about a baby with a full diaper at 3 a.m. There's nothing spiritual about land when it's under your fingernails. And reputation, we're supposed to give that up, aren't we? But God says, Abram, I know what you want. You want to be able to walk on the beach of earth and not have the next wave wash out your footsteps. You want, in this terribly fragile, changing environment, something that's going to last. Would you let me give it to you? No, I'm going to grab it for myself. And all the angels say, but this couple says, why not? And all the angels say, yes! There is hope for the world. There is hope that the curse can be reversed. So this moment changed the world. And Jan's question, how did he know? And we'll have to wait for heaven for that one. Somewhere in, it's not merely Abram, it's Sarai as well, in their souls, they said, yeah. Let's give him a chance. Now look at verse 7. What's the verb there? Appeared. Appeared. Wow. In verse 1, it was said. Here it is, appeared. Again, I hope in this long ordeal that you've endured with me, you've gotten a little bit of thought about Bible study. The key word is observation. You cannot interpret what you have not seen. Appeared. Appeared. The next step after observation is questions. There are 3 questions. What is it that I have seen? Why that? And what are the implications of that? You can't always answer those questions definitively, but if you'll try, you'll get insight that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So, appeared. What do you think that means? It sounds like a physical manifestation of some sort. In some way or another, Abram says, I have seen God. Now, possibly it's in a prophet. Possibly it's in a fire. But we don't know. We're not told. Exactly. It's to see. Said he heard. Now he has, in some way, seen God. Why? Now here's the next question. Why do you think God did that here? And what did he say when he appeared? What's the verse say? Yes, bingo. You are going to have children, and I'm going to give you this land, which you are legally prevented from ever owning 1 square foot of. Now, why do you think God might have appeared to make that statement? To seal the deal, yes.
Or did Abraham trust him? He could have appeared first, and then Abraham, but he knew Abraham trusted him.
I think that's an important point. It is. Okay, you took the step. Now I want to confirm that. I want to confirm that it was really me you heard. And that I am going to do this somehow or other. Yes.
That verse has the word said in it, so
Oh, yeah.
still got the auditory thing.
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, yes.
We're gonna keep all this stuff from it's so unbelievable that
Yes.
that, you know, the entire God that stand in front of him is
Yeah.
he would not trust his own instincts. He would trust
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
ability. He did. That's something that's so outrageous. He needs to have presence to make it.
I have no kids, and if I did, they couldn't own any land. I'm going to give your offspring this land. So yes, I think you're exactly right. And I think what we've been saying is right, that he heard him and said, "Okay, we'll do it." And now God says, "You did it. You did it." James.
We see their witnesses, their faithfulness to God. But Abraham didn't have that. He was the father, he was the progenitor, he was not in the faith. And so God had to show him faith. And then now we can similarly, without seeing the faith, see the lives of the faithful witnesses who have gone before us. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is Abram's response? Yes. Whoever you are, you're the real thing.
I believe it was in the sequence where I read that Abraham then, when it took an axe, destroyed all his father's idols. I don't know. It's just one of those little.
Yeah, it certainly could. It certainly could be. Certainly could be that they carried these things along with them, like Rebecca was to do later. And he says, "Hey, I don't need them. I don't need them. I've got the real thing here."
Sacrifice was part of it.
Oh, I think so. I think so. And I think that goes all the way back to Cain and Abel. We've got to give something to God. What is it? And ultimately, it's life. So, yeah, I think there's no question that this involves sacrifice. And it's under that. Now, let's go on. Oh, my, sorry. Well, let's go on. We don't need to go to church. Okay, we'll stop there.